I was running late. Again. My knuckles white against the steering wheel as I navigated the winding suburban streets toward my parents' sprawling Tudor home. 6 bedrooms, 3-car garage, and not a single corner where I'd ever felt like I truly belonged. Youngest marketing VP in the company's 15-year history, I muttered to myself, repeating the words my boss had said at last week's promotion celebration. Words that should have meant something. Words that would mean absolutely nothing the moment I walked through my parents' front door. I parked on the street, not in the driveway where my brother Tyler's Range Rover and my sister Rachel's Mercedes sat like they owned the place. Which, in a way, they did. I was the visitor here, always had been. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. Hair tamed into submission with expensive product, makeup flawless, the armor I'd spent 40 minutes applying this morning. I smoothed down my charcoal blazer, the one that cost more than my first month's rent. Deep breath in. Out. Game face on. The front door opened before I could even knock. My mother stood there, her disapproval radiating like heat from an open oven. "Nice of you to finally join us, Morgan," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "We were about to start without you." No happy Thanksgiving. No good to see you. Just immediate criticism, right on schedule. I stepped inside, the familiar knot forming in my stomach. My father emerged from the living room, tumbler of scotch already in hand, though it was barely 3 in the afternoon. "One of these days, you'll find something more important than that fancy job of yours," he said with a dismissive wave. Not a question, a statement, as if my career, the one I'd fought tooth and nail for, was just some phase I was going through. "Good to see you too, Dad," I replied, the smile on my face so practiced it almost felt real. The house smelled like turkey and tension, a special holiday blend. From the dining room came the sounds of my siblings and their spouses, laughter and conversation flowing easily. They belonged here. I was just passing through, like always. I followed my mother into the dining room, where the large mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier. Crystal glasses caught the light. The good china was out. Name cards in my mother's perfect calligraphy marked each place. I scanned for mine but didn't see it. "Morgan," my mother said, gesturing to the corner of the room where a folding card table had been set up. Plastic cups, paper plates with cartoon turkeys printed on them. 3 of my nieces and nephews already seated there, the oldest no more than 10. "Go ahead and sit at the kids' table." I froze, certain I'd misheard. I was 28. I had a corner office. I managed a team of 12 people. "You're joking," I said, my voice barely audible over the conversation at the main table. My mother's eyebrows lifted slightly. "We don't have enough room at the main table. Tyler's new client is joining us and Rachel's in-laws are here. You understand?" I didn't understand. Not at all. Tyler caught my eye from his place at the table, the good table, the real table, and shot me a warning look. Don't make a scene. I'd seen that look my entire life. I clutched my designer handbag like a life preserver and walked numbly to the kids' table. My 7-year-old niece Zoe looked up at me with a grape juice mustache. "Are you in trouble, Auntie Morgan?" "No, sweetie," I said, carefully arranging myself on the tiny folding chair. "Just sitting with you guys today." For the next hour, I sat there, sipping wine from a plastic cup while answering questions about Minecraft from my nephew and wiping spills with paper napkins. 10 feet away, the adults, my family, discussed politics, real estate investments, and Tyler's newest client acquisition. No one asked about my promotion. No one asked about my life at all. "Can I see your phone?" my niece asked, sticky fingers already reaching. "Not right now, Zoe," I started, but it was too late. Her grape juice-stained hands knocked over my cup, sending red wine cascading across my cream silk blouse. And that's when it happened. Something broke inside me, not dramatically, but with a quiet finality, like the last support wire snapping on a bridge that was already failing. I stood up, wine dripping from my ruined blouse, and grabbed my purse. "Morgan," my sister called from the adult table, noticing my movement. "Everything okay?" I looked around at my family, all comfortable in their assigned roles, in this hierarchy that had been established since childhood. They were waiting for me to laugh it off, to clean myself up in the powder room, and return to my designated spot at the children's table. Some traditions, I said carefully, aren't worth preserving. Then I walked out. No dramatic exit, no slamming doors. Just the soft click of the front door instead of the slam my trembling hands wanted to deliver. In the car, I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and took my first full breath in hours. By the time I reached the highway, my phone was vibrating nonstop in my purse. I connected it to the car's Bluetooth to hear the voicemails. "Morgan, you're being ridiculous. Come back right now." My mother. "Way to ruin dinner. Real mature. Tyler." "Mom's upset. Dad's pissed. What were you thinking?" Rachel. The irony wasn't lost on me. Being called childish by the same people who had literally seated me at a children's table. I silenced my phone and kept driving, with no real destination in mind. I ended up at a 24-hour diner off the highway, one of those places with sticky laminate menus and bottomless coffee. It was filled with other holiday refugees, people working shifts, travelers passing through, souls with nowhere else to go. For once, I fit right in. "Rough holiday?" the waitress asked, her name tag reading Darling. The lines around her eyes suggested she'd seen plenty of people like me on Thanksgiving night. "You could say that," I replied, ordering coffee and a slice of pie I didn't really want. 2 booths down, a guy about my age looked up from his laptop and nodded in recognition. "You look like you just made a prison break," he said, and I mean that as a compliment. I surprised myself by laughing. "That obvious, huh?" "Not obvious, just familiar." He closed his laptop. "Jake Harmon, fellow holiday escapee." Morgan Chen, newly designated adult rebel. We ended up talking for hours. Jake listened, really listened, as I told him about the kids' table, the years of dismissal, the constant undermining. He didn't try to fix it or minimize it. He just witnessed it. "You look different," he said eventually. "Different from when you walked in." "Different how?" "Lighter somehow, like you put down something heavy." While nursing my 3rd cup of coffee, I scrolled through my phone's gallery. Family photos from the past few years took on a new significance. There I was at last Christmas, literally half cropped out of the family photo. There I was at my parents' anniversary party, seated at the far end of the table while Tyler and Rachel flanked our parents. There was the group text about the family investment opportunity that everyone had been included in except me because Dad thought it was too complex. It wasn't just about a table. It was about being systematically positioned as less than. By 1 a.m., the decision crystallized. I opened our family group chat and composed a message. I attached the Christmas photo where only half my face was visible and typed, "This isn't just about the kids' table today. It's about years of being treated as less than my siblings, less than an adult, less than a full member of this family. I'm done accepting the scraps of your attention and respect. Don't contact me until you're ready to acknowledge the pattern and make real changes." I pressed send, then powered off my phone completely. For the first time in years, nobody could reach me with their demands and expectations. The silence felt like freedom. I kept my phone off for 3 full days. When I finally turned it back on Sunday night, preparing for the work week ahead, the notifications flooded in like a breaking dam. Dozens of missed calls. Group chat messages cycling through anger, dismissal, and finally, grudging concern. But among the digital pile-up was a single text from an unexpected source. My 13-year-old niece Emma. "I get it, Aunt Morgan. They make me feel invisible, too." I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at those words. Emma was Rachel's oldest, quiet and bookish, always with her nose in a novel during family gatherings. I'd never realized she was watching, observing the family dynamics with the same clarity I had only recently found. I texted back, "Thank you for seeing me, Em. That means more than you know." The next day, while sorting through the remaining messages, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Morgan speaking," I answered, professional mode engaged. "It's Aunt Julia." My breath caught. Aunt Julia was my father's sister who'd been effectively banished from family gatherings years ago after what my parents vaguely referred to as the incident. She'd reached out a few times when I was in college, but I'd been discouraged from responding. "How did you get my number?" I asked. "Emma," she replied, a smile in her voice. "Smart kid, resourceful. She told me what happened at Thanksgiving." I sank into my couch. I probably overreacted. "No," Julia said firmly. "You're not crazy, Morgan. I've been exactly where you are." For the next hour, Julia told me her side of the family estrangement. How she'd challenged my grandfather's sexist business practices, how she'd been systematically frozen out of family decisions, how the incident was actually her refusing to apologize for demanding equal treatment. "They'll tell you you're the problem," she said. "That you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too everything. It's a lot easier than admitting they've been treating you badly." After we hung up, I pulled out my journal and wrote BOUNDARAES in bold capitals across the top of a blank page. Below it, I created a concrete list of requirements for any future family interaction. 1, I will be treated as an adult equal to my siblings. 2, my career achievements will be acknowledged and respected. 3, I will have a literal seat at the adult table in all family gatherings. 4, no decisions involving the entire family will be made without my input. 5, no more passive-aggressive comments about my lifestyle choices. I took the list to my next therapy session, where Dr. Winters helped me refine and reinforce my resolve. "These boundaries aren't punitive," she reminded me. "They're protective. You're not trying to hurt your family, you're trying to stop them from hurting you." Meanwhile, the family was in full damage control mode. Emma reported that Tyler had organized an emergency family meeting to discuss the Morgan situation, a meeting I wasn't invited to. "They're freaking out, Aunt Morgan," Emma texted. "Grandma keeps saying you'll come to your senses, but Grandpa seems worried." My mother had posted a vague Facebook status about family challenges and keeping private matters private. Tyler's wife had reached out with a carefully worded text about misunderstandings. Even my father's golf buddy mentioned something to me when I ran into him at the coffee shop, evidence that word of my departure had spread beyond our immediate circle. It was time to widen the audience. I crafted a detailed email to the extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, with specific examples and even photographic evidence of the pattern of exclusion. I addressed it to everyone, not just my immediate family. No more private shame. The responses trickled in over the next few days. "Cousin Stephanie, I've watched this happen for years and never said anything. I'm sorry. Uncle Mark, your grandfather did the same thing to Julia. It's not right. Even my mother's best friend sent a private message. Karen has always played favorites. Stay strong." For the first time, I realized I wasn't alone in seeing the pattern. I just might have been the first to name it out loud. After 3 weeks of radio silence from my immediate family, Rachel called. "We want to talk," she said, her voice missing its usual confidence. "All of us, can we meet somewhere?" "Where and when?" I asked, not committing yet. Dad suggested Marino's, Saturday at 7. Marino's was a neutral location, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown that wasn't tied to any family traditions or memories. I agreed, but with conditions. "I'll make the reservation," I said, "in my name." I arrived 20 minutes early on Saturday, having carefully selected my outfit, a power suit I'd worn to close my biggest marketing deal last year. The hostess led me to the table I'd specifically requested, round, with no head or foot, no built-in hierarchy. I placed name cards at each setting, deliberately positioning myself between my father and Tyler, with my mother across from me where I could maintain direct eye contact. No more relegation to the edges. They arrived as a unit, mother, father, Tyler, Rachel. Their steps faltered slightly when they saw the arrangement, the momentary confusion as they located their assigned seats. "Thank you for coming," I said once they were settled, taking control of the conversation before my father could. "I appreciate you being willing to talk." My father cleared his throat. I think we all agree that family unity is what matters most. This whole situation has gotten out of hand, and… Dad, I interrupted gently but firmly. Before we start, I'd like to set some ground rules. Each person speaks only for themselves. No one interrupts. No collective we think statements, just honest individual perspectives. The shock on his face, when I held up my hand, and he actually stopped mid-syllable, was its own kind of victory. Now, I continued, making eye contact with each of them, can anyone explain why a 28-year-old successful woman should sit at a children's table for Thanksgiving dinner? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my mother spoke. I never thought of it as inappropriate. I guess I still don't see you as fully adult without a husband or children. The raw honesty stunned me momentarily. So my executive position doesn't qualify me for adulthood, but marriage would. She squirmed visibly. When I was your age, I had both of you already. Different times, different choices, I replied evenly. My father jumped in. I always thought success meant family, not just career. Tyler and Rachel followed the traditional path. The path you valued, I corrected. Tyler surprised me by speaking next. Your success intimidates me, he admitted, not meeting my eyes. You've achieved more professionally than I have, without Dad's connections. It's easier to think of you as little Morgan than to acknowledge that. Rachel looked like she might cry. I knew it wasn't fair the way they treated you, but saying something meant risking my own position. I'm not proud of that. One by one, they laid bare the uncomfortable truths. My independence threatened the family structure. My different choices implicitly criticized theirs. My success without their blueprint scared them. By the time the main course arrived, years of unspoken dynamics had been aired. It wasn't pretty, and there were moments of defensiveness and deflection. But underneath it all was something I hadn't expected, a fragile thread of respect. I want to be clear about my boundaries moving forward, I said as the waiter cleared our plates. I'd rehearsed this part repeatedly with Dr. Winters. First, I expect to be treated as an equal adult in all family settings. That means a seat at the main table, inclusion in all family decisions, and respect for my career and life choices. My parents exchanged glances, but I continued. Second, no more passive-aggressive comments about my job, my relationship status, or my priorities. If you have concerns, address them directly and respectfully. Tyler nodded slightly. Third, I need acknowledgement of the pattern that's existed for years. Not just a one-time apology, but ongoing awareness and change. And if we can't meet these requirements, my father asked, the lawyer in him seeking the terms and conditions. Then I'll continue creating boundaries until you can, I said simply. I love you all, but I won't participate in my own diminishment anymore. When the check arrived, the waiter placed it between my father and me, the traditional position of power. Dad reached for it automatically, but I was faster. I've got this, I said, sliding my credit card into the leather folder without even checking the amount. Morgan, that's not necessary, he began. I want to, I replied. I can afford it. It wasn't about the money. It was about dismantling one more assumption about power and position in our family structure. 1 year later, I hosted Thanksgiving in my downtown loft. I'd spent weeks preparing, not just the food, but mentally steeling myself for the dynamics that might emerge. The centerpiece of my open-concept living space was a single expansive table I'd had custom-made for the occasion. No kids' table in sight. My nieces and nephews were interspersed among the adults, booster seats provided for the smallest ones. Where would you like me to put the cranberry sauce? My mother asked, hovering uncertainly by the table. Not directing, not assuming, asking. Anywhere there's space, Mom, I replied with a genuine smile. My father arrived with a bottle of champagne. To celebrate your new client, he said, referencing the major account I'd landed last month. That was impressive work, from what I read in the business journal. Throughout the evening, I noticed the small shifts. Tyler asked my advice about a marketing strategy for his business. Rachel trusted me to hold her new baby without hovering nervously. My mother started to suggest that Emma sit with the other kids before catching herself mid-sentence and redirecting. Aunt Julia was there too, her first family Thanksgiving in over a decade. We exchanged knowing glances across the table as she integrated back into the fold on her own terms. When it came time for the blessing, we linked hands around my table, one continuous circle with no beginning or end, no head or foot. My father, surprisingly, asked if I would lead the grace. I looked around at the faces of my family, imperfect, challenging, evolving, and felt a complex emotion that wasn't quite forgiveness, but was something like peace. "I'm grateful for growth," I said simply, "in all of us." Later that night, after everyone had left and I was loading the dishwasher, I noticed something I'd missed earlier. My mother had brought place cards, old habits die hard, but she'd positioned mine at the head of the table, not as concession, but as recognition. I tucked it into my journal, right next to the page where I'd written BOUNDARIES in bold capitals a year ago. Next to it, I wrote 2 words. "Finally home."